Casual Magic has been brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL to get 5% off of your sale. And then also by Coalesce Apparel, where you can get really cool t-shirts and stuff, and use the code Casual Magic to get 10% off your sale. And by Architect, a deck hosting website that doesn't really sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them. And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam, Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Greenlit Podcasts. You can find it and all of our shows at greenlitpodcast.com. Now, today I have maybe the most special guest I've had on this show. I have the lead designer of Magic himself, one of the great minds of our game, and maybe one of the people who thinks about Magic more than I do. The only person I can think of who probably thinks about Magic more than I do, the great Mark Rosewater. Thank you so much for joining me, sir. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Well, thanks for having me. Casual Magic is exciting to me. I love talking casual Magic.
I thought you would appreciate not having to talk about game balance and tournaments for a minute. And so I wanted to start with Magic has grown exponentially in the past, like, let's say 5 years. Maybe even 10 years since like Innistrad and Duels of the Planeswalkers. It's gone just, the curve is like going to the moon. I mean, I think somebody said that there are probably more raw CEDH, competitive EDH players now than there were total EDH players in 2010. And commensurately, the number of people who play like casual Commander has also proportionately gone up. So that must mean that you guys have seen like incredible changes in the way the game is purchased and played in these past decade. How has it been for you on the inside? What's it like?
I mean, one of the things about Magic you have to understand is it is not as if Magic has always been in flux. It has always constantly been changing. It is true, for example, the stat that we use is, I think the last 10 years, 9 of the 10 years was the best-selling year Magic had ever had. And then 1 year, like we were off by like 2%. Like we were very close. But I mean, Magic, yes, has definitely been on incline. But there are so many factors that change in the game. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting is when you go back, way back to the beginning of Magic, like the internet was really not what we think of it now. You know what I'm saying? It was Usenet groups and it was sure. Like there was a little bit of communication, but like early on, for example, when Magic first came out, we didn't tell you what was in the sets. Like there wasn't even card lists. Like you had to figure it out.
Yeah, I remember going to Scry and Inquest and trying to look at the price guides and figure out what's actually happening.
I mean, I remember, for example, there was a magazine called cedh magazine.
Yeah.
It was the first magazine to ever list what they thought was an alpha and what they thought the rarities were. And they got a lot of the rarities were wrong. But, you know, like that's the first time I'd ever seen, ooh, here's a list of actual Magic cards. You know, for that. So, I mean, so many different things have changed. Like one big thing is just the world has changed. How we communicate has changed. How the world treats gaming has changed. You know, like when I first started playing Magic, like being a gamer wasn't something you kind of kept it to yourself. You know, it was something in which, hey, I have my gamer friends, but you didn't scream from the rooftops, I'm a gamer.
Yeah.
And now it's like everybody plays games. Now it's a thing like you don't have to be kind of be shy of your gamer self. I mean, and I say this all the time, but Magic is not really one game. It is sort of a series of games that have a shared card set and rule system, and that the audience keeps coming up with different ways to play. Commander being a perfect example, where Commander did not exist 15 years ago, and people sort of made it and refined it, and now, yeah, it's a whole thing, but that thing did not exist at some point. And
what was it like when you first heard about Commander? Like, because you were obviously at Wizards when it came out or when people started playing it. It must have been weird for you to sit there and say, what do you mean you have one legend that's ruling your deck? What is even going on?
Well, when I first heard about it, it was the format it was like the Judge format. That's how I knew it. Like, it's what the judges did at the Pro Tour, when like that. When my first exposure to it was, it's this quirky thing the judges did. And that's how I knew it as. It's this fun format that, Scott Larrabee played. And, it was, and then we do a product that we call the innovative product, where we, and a lot of different things that fill that, Battle Bond.
Arch Enemy, Plane Chase, etc.
Yeah, Plane Chase, the Unsets, all sorts of, it's us trying different things. And in some level, if you're talking about casual Magic, that's the SKU we most aim toward, this sort of casual
Yeah,
style of
like
play.
if I would go back like, and look at decades worth of products or like 15 years worth of products, every product that I've loved in a year has been the one that's been in the innovation set. So that tracks.
Well, one of the things that's interesting for the audience to understand is the challenge of designing Magic is there's not one audience. Like I said, it's not even really one game.
Right.
We're making something for all sorts of people, and that one of the things we tried, and the reason we did the innovative products in the first place, was we want Magic to keep changing and evolving. And what makes Magic Magic in my mind is it says to the player, hey, you get to be a game designer, and we will craft our game to be what you want to play.
You're making a bucket of Legos instead of a puzzle.
So let Magic sort of shape and be that. And Commander's a great example where people found something and did this cool thing, and here Legends will matter in this way where they didn't before, and like it's a good example of something that came out of the public and just exploded, and then Wizards, we recognized it, and so we've played into it and made products for it, and now there's not a product we make that we don't think about Commander just because it's real big right now.
So when you guys were doing that first innovative product with Commander, were you worried that people wouldn't understand what the format was or what people were trying to do with it, or worried about trying to make cards for this specifically? Because I know the first Commander deck was the first time you guys had made cards that were not standard legal, or like that were not made for standard or something. Like, wasn't that one of the first times that you made product like cards specifically for that product?
Yeah, we made stuff that wasn't. I mean, for example, the Unsets were not made for
okay, well, yeah,
but that existed back in 1998. So
yeah.
But the I mean, we obviously, for us to make a product for it means we had to see enough support. So it was pretty well far along. But if we're going to make a product for it, like because we work years ahead of time. Sure. We wouldn't want to make a product, and by the time we put the product out, the format's not even played anymore. So we have to have a decent amount of confidence. So the fact that we made it meant, okay, it built up enough that we knew it was going to be around when we put it out. Now, even then, we did not expect the response we got. And we put out this product, and then every year after that, there was like a year gap where we had to fill it in. But as soon as we could, because we worked 2 years out, we just made it a yearly thing.
Yeah, I remember at 2011.
That's like, okay, we're just going to do this every year. So that happened very quickly. So
it was so funny because I remember 2011, because that's when I got into Commander when the first precons came out. It was right after that. And I remember Aaron Forsyth wrote an article saying, oh, you guys bought all of them and they sold out completely. And we don't have one for next year. So here's Commander's Arsenal with like 6 cards. We'll get back to it in another year, I promise. And then we've had Commander decks literally ever since, which must be just amazing to think about a product succeeding that heavily.
Yeah, no, I'm saying one of the things that's really interesting about Magic is the community is a huge part of the game.
Yes.
And not just, I mean, because they play the game. We love that they play the game. But also that it is, as much as we behind the scenes are making stuff, the audience is making stuff. And there's a lot of fun give and take between watching what the audience likes. Like a lot of my job is interacting with the audience, hearing what they like, and then trying to make things that play into things that they like. We want to go to worlds that people, I mean, we return to some worlds, but new worlds are like, okay, well, we want to go some, like, perfect example is Call Time's coming up, right?
Yes.
Players been asking forever to go to a Norse-inspired world, and we just had to find the right place and the right time and the right take on it. But, like, whenever we announce new things, it's because I think, like, I don't ever do a set that I don't think there's an audience that's really going to love that product. Like, we don't make something that we don't really believe there's an audience that's going to love it. And a lot of my challenge is, okay, what doesn't exist that the audience would like to exist?
Well, yeah. So building off that, have you done a product that you think you thought people would really dig, or like a mechanic that you thought people would really enjoy that just fell?
Yeah, for sure. A perfect example is Time Spiral. The suspend mechanic, it actually had come up earlier, and we held it for to do a time. I wanted to do a time themed block, and I loved suspend. From a game like theoretical sense, that I'm trading mana for time felt so cool to me, and I really liked it. And I'm like, okay, this is a slam dunk. And then the response from the audience was, like it wasn't. Part of it I think was it turned out, and this was a good lesson, that it was such an easy concept in idea, but such a clunky idea in practice that it if it was just like if Magic was only a computer game, it probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
But the fact we had like, okay, now you got to have a card and make counters and move the counter. Like there's a
and you
lot
got to
of
remind people it's got haste on the other side, and
yeah. And so it's a really good example of I fell in love with kind of the raw concept of it, and I didn't really appreciate the what would it take to make it happen. And logistics are a real big matter of things. Like it's not just a matter of how fun is it to play in the game. It's how fun is it with everything you have to do. Like what's the totality of it? Now I have learned that the audience they'll jump through hoops if they really enjoy it. So like if something's really fun, there's some amount of hoops they'll jump through. But it turned out that that suspend was a good example of it's a very spiky mechanic. I mean, there are players that love suspend. I get people who say, "When's suspend coming back?" And I always say it's exile with some counters on it. I don't know when it's going to come back, but it's just one of those things where it was a little too bookkeepy. And if we could find way, like in some ways, Rebound was a better execution of suspend.
Yes. I love Rebound. I did not dig suspend.
There's a little bit of you're waiting for something, but there's some payoff to it, and it's not quite as complicated.
Yeah, that Rebound's way easier to understand than suspend is. And I mean, I guess that's the thing, because we're a casual show, and a lot of Magic players are casual kitchen table players, not just necessarily Commander players, but also just cards I own, the deck players, you know. And when you guys make super spiky sets like the Odyssey block or things like, I don't know, more recently, there have been some spikier elements in set, like Ikorio is a very complicated set. Do you guys worry that you'll lose some of the kitchen table or confuse them away from the game?
Okay, well, let me go off right now real quickly. My pet peeve on the word casual.
All right.
I will, since I'm on the casual podcast.
Bring it up.
Okay, so casual actually means 3 different things, and they get conflated, and that causes a problem. So sometimes people use casual to mean non-competitive / non-serious, meaning I'm more in it for the social aspect. I want to enjoy. Whether I win or lose is not the main part of it. It's more that I want to experience the joy of it, and it's not so much about proving what I can do or not, as much as it's enjoying the experience. And that's kind of the Spike Tammy different, you know. So that idea, casual, is the idea of someone who's not super serious and competitive. That's that definition of casual.
That's me 100%.
Okay. Second definition of casual means not in franchise, meaning I'm somebody who Magic is just part of my life, and I'm part of the community, and I'm on stream every single day and talking about it, and I'm just very infused. And that casual means, well, I play Magic, but I mean, I don't maybe read about it, or I'm not necessarily, I don't join in on Twitter about it. You know, it's something that I do, but I'm not. I do it at a more, you know, a casual pace that it's just something I enjoy, but it's not as identity defining for me. You know, it's not like the thing I do, it's a thing I do.
Yes.
And another definition of casual that is the idea of not experienced. The idea that I'm not someone who knows a lot about the game. Things confuse me, or I get, I don't, things that are a little bit complicated really are a problem for me, because I play the game, I'm not all the nuances of it. You know, I'm not that experienced in the game. And so the problem we run into is when I say I'm casual because I'm non-competitive, or I'm casual because I'm non-franchised, or I'm casual because I'm not experienced, those are completely different things. And you can be, for example, any one of those things, yet be like, for example, my take for you is I'm pretty sure you are non-competitive casual, but very enfranchised, not at all non-enfranchised.
Yeah, like casual. I call myself a hard casual, as in like I'm like super deep in the setting. I'm super like completely plugged in. And yet when I play the game, I care more about having a good couple hours with my friends. Magic is a vehicle by which we're having a good time. I care what cards are, but like if I win or lose, that's not really the relevant part for me. It's more that everybody left the table having had a really fun time.
Right. So my job is, one of my jobs, one of many jobs, is I need to take care of the casual player, but that means I need to take care of the casual player, the non-competitive one, the casual player, the non-franchised one, and the casual player, the non-experienced one. And those are very, very, very different things. And so, for example, like one of the problems of suspend was it was a problem for the non-experienced casual player. It's confusing. And it might have upset the logistics of it and all the stuff you had to go through. Mostly it's the experienced player, the non-experienced player that had a problem with that. Now there's some people that don't like the logistics of it, and the non-competitive player might be, it wasn't fun for me to have to track all that stuff. And it's not that I can't, I didn't enjoy it. Where the non-experienced player might be, I had trouble understanding it. And so, like, when we're talking about this is where it gets very complicated. Like, oh, well, suspend didn't really tend to bother the the non-experienced casual player had a problem with it, and some of the non-competitive casual player had a problem with it. I'm not sure the non-franchise player necessarily did or didn't have a problem with it. So, like, that's where we get into trouble when we're talking about what's casual and what's not. It's just so many different audiences, and
that's why I like to
really
use,
need to get other words for it, because it's really
like, for the casual non-competitive player, I prefer to use social. Like, you're a social player. You're here for the experience, for the fun, not necessarily for the win. You know the game, but you're here for the gathering part. And the non-enfranchised.
There's a problem. I mean, social is not too bad. There's one problem with social as a definitional thing.
Well, I guess if you're on one-on-one, right? So.
No. For example, let's say there's solitaire variants. I can play Magic Solitaire. Not social, but it's not competitive. What is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, social implies that I'm in it because of the interaction with other people. And
Fair.
a lot of the non-competitive casuals are social, but there's some groups of that aren't social. That's why words get tricky. I do agree that social is not bad. It covers 95% probably of that group. So it's not a bad word. But then there's stuff that, like, one of the things, for example, when I talk about the psychographics, like Timmy, Tammy, Jenny, Spike, different people play for different psychological reasons. And one of the other things that's really important to understand is one of the other vectors I don't talk a lot about is, am I in it for other people to see something or for myself to see it? Like, for example, we'll take Johnny Jenny as my psychographic. Is it important that I show myself to other people, or is it important that I understand myself? And those are just different aspects of that. Same with the Timmy Tammy thing, which is, do I want to experience those things externally, or do I want to experience the things internally?
Like, did I put this combo together to make myself happy, or to say, look at this thing I can do?
Right, exactly. And so the introvert extrovert, I don't talk about this a lot. This is a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
That when you take the psychographics, there's the introvert version and the extrovert version, meaning, am I in it to make myself happy?
Yes.
Or am I in it to sort of, well, they both make you happy, but am I sort of seeing it for myself, or do I want others to see it? And those are very different aspects. And so when you get into social, that's another thing. So social implies that I want the external interaction, necessarily the internal interaction. So there's a lot of people that the self-satisfaction is internal and not external. So those people aren't technically social, but anyway, sorry.
That's absolutely fascinating, though. That's totally fascinating. Because, I mean, that means that your process of design must be so difficult to do. Like, when you,
it's very hard.
Like, I read your articles. I've been reading your articles for 20 years, since maybe the first one you even put out. Like, for a long time when I was distanced from Magic, my connection was your articles, right? So, like, when you started talking about zombies and stuff for Innistrad, and I started playing Xbox duels with Planeswalkers, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll go back to this game I played as a kid. And now I've obviously been here ever since. But, so when you're trying to do this, when you're trying to, like, make a set like Ikoria or a set like Innistrad, are you trying to use the theme to draw in the people who might not be quite so enfranchised or quite so, like, connected to it? Or how are you going to use this design to help the person who is less hardcore tournament level appreciate the game?
So here's the crux to me of game design, which is, I'm going to make something, and I want the player to enjoy it as much as they can, right? I'm trying to, I like to think of game design as an art form. It's probably highfalutin to me, but I like to think of, like, I come from a writing background, right? And I see game design a lot how I saw writing, which is, you have to think about how does the audience interact with it? And so a big thing for me is, the two big factors that matter for me, like, if you probably, like, my style of game design rests on these two factors, which is psychology and resonance. And so what it means by that is that I want to know what the audience wants out of the game. This is psychology, because I want I want to tap into what they want. The whole idea of the psychic graphics, for example, in the first place was, why do people play? What makes them happy? What brings joy to them? What makes the game something they want to participate in? And the second set is, I want to take things they know because I'm trying to make you happy. And so here's the secret is, you inside you have things that already make you happy. And I don't have to reinvent the wheel. What I can do is say, oh, well, what are things you already like? And let me do the magic spin on those things. We'll take Throne Eldraine as a great example, where I knew that fairy tales are just such a strong part of our social consciousness. Like, everybody just knows these things, that when we sort of put the magic spin on them, you get it, because you're like, I've heard this story, you know. The stat that I talk all about is, for an American, that when you die, you will have seen 10 movies with the plot of Cinderella. Just meaning that this is such an ingrained story that you're going to see it told again and again and again. So it's fun when we can take those kind of things and put our spin on them, because that means that I'm kind of meeting you halfway, that I'm taking something you already enjoy and already it has meaning for you. Like, a big part of what I want is, I want that response from my audience that it makes them happy. It brings some, and not just happiness, there's other emotions too, but it really brings something to them. That the most important thing from a game design standpoint is, I want you to play my game and then go, I want to play that again, right? I want to make such a strong impression that it becomes part of who you are and what you do. You know, that like, games, when they succeed, go beyond just being an activity to being an extension of who you are as a person.
So related to that, then I mean, isn't that, I mean, I don't mean to like criticize or go super heavy immediately, but it feels to me like that definitely makes assumptions of your audience, right? Like, you're assuming that your audience has definitely got like a very Eurocentric kind of background to understand. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I don't know Cinderella, but because obviously I know Cinderella, but it's more like I feel like you're right. There's a lot of resonance to be gained and a lot of design work to be done by just taking the assumptions of the player base. But for instance, in Japan, like, where there's a large number of Magic players, they don't necessarily have the same Grimm's fairy tales that we do. I mean, they don't have the kind of like resonant effect to that. And in other markets, for instance, we don't either, like China and Korea. And is there any sense of Magic being able to try to not just like rely on the major like European and American kind of attitudes to learn the resonant stuff, but also maybe introduce to them other resonant cultures that way they can also learn, and like the people in, say, Japan, China, etc., can also kind of feel that there's some resonant folklore there. I know you guys tried that with that dual deck that was put out with the global series, and that was really cool. I don't know how well it did. Obviously, we haven't seen any more global series, so that probably tells you me how well it did. But I'm just curious, is there any thought, especially nowadays, given to trying to find new stories or new ways to introduce stories that we might not already have a basis for?
Yeah, well, here's the challenge is, there are two different things that we can do in that regard. One is hit things you already know, and the other is introduce things you don't know. The introduce things you don't know, so when I'm talking about resonance, I'm meaning I'm showing something you already have some affinity for, and then I'm playing into that. But Magic Worlds, we get to introduce things. So part of making a set is we're putting our spin on something that you might know, right? So the idea is, while only so much of a set needs to be resonant, meaning so much of that has to be, ooh, I recognize that there's some trope space I'm playing or something that I understand. And the rest gets to be, we get to invent things. Like, one of the cool things about Magic has been, we can introduce things. Some things are things we invent. They don't exist at all. The Phyrexians or something, that's a villain we made up that didn't exist. We made it
Hopefully
up.
We'll see them again soon.
Maybe someday we'll see them. We'll see the Phyrexians again. We have not seen the last of the Phyrexians. They're an awesome villain, so of course we'll see them again at some point. So when there's new things, we can either introduce brand new, we've made it up, or that's an also good opportunity to introduce stuff the audience might not know. The thing that's different is, they're different parts of the design, and they have to be treated differently. The resonant part of the design, because you're playing the stuff that people know, you can lean on it in a way that you can't lean on new stuff. So for example, if I'm doing a top-down set, meaning I'm doing a set in which the structure is the flavor, if my audience doesn't know the flavor, they won't understand the structure. For example, if I say, okay, I'm going to make a set and I'm going to put in it werewolves and vampires and zombies and ghosts, spirits, you're going to get a sense of why those go together, right? You're going to go, oh, I see, you're doing gothic horror. Like the audience understands that, and those make sense. Now, if I put together things from a stuff where most of the audience doesn't know it, and they go together, I can't lean on that to be the glue to make the audience understand the structure. Meaning, I have to do a bottoms-up design, essentially, meaning I have to take structure that is mechanically based, and then I can layer the new stuff on top of that. But I can't use it as resonance I can use definitionally and structurally because the audience knows it, and when they see it, it gives definition. Meaning, when you see the vampire, werewolf, zombie, and spirit, you don't go, I don't understand what's going on. You go, oh, I get it, it's this. So the trick is, when we introduce new cultures, and I'm all for introducing new cultures, and when I say new cultures, introducing cultures that the majority of our audience might not be familiar with. It's much better served in a bottom-up design where it's the flavoring. Now, you then can do definitional things with it, but you can't define the structure by it because the audience won't know the structure. So, for example, a good example, you and I did Kaladesh.
Yeah.
One of the mistakes we made on Kaladesh, I think, in looking back, is we were not as we too much made a steampunk set and not enough made an Indian set, if that made sense.
Yeah.
And so what happened was there was opportunities for us to introduce stuff to people because the set it was a bottom-up set. It was about energy, and the set was not about, it wasn't a top-down set. It wasn't about flavor definitionally. It was about a mechanical structure.
Like if I was going to give Kaladesh a one-sentence example, I would call it 1950s California car culture, because it's got a lot of racers, it's got a lot of rogues, and kind of like cool kids sitting around with their vest. It feels very rebel without a cause, like more than it felt like steampunk to me. If I were to take the artwork off of it, it felt like
what we were trying to do, just real quickly behind the scenes, is we wanted to put Magic's take on steampunk. So what we did is we took a steampunk shell and then redressed it. So for example, here I'll one of my themes. Star Wars is a fantasy story with science fiction dressing.
Yes.
Meaning the kind of story it's telling is not a science fiction story. Science fiction stories are all about what if. Yes. It is telling a morality story, and fantasy stories are all about morality. So what they did is they took a fantasy structure and wrapped it into science fiction trappings. Yes. Magic is a science fiction story with a fantasy wrapping. That Magic's all about what if. That's what Magic is. What if this were true? What if that were true? We're an IP all about alternate worlds and what if this was true of the world? What if that was true of the world? We have a very science fiction underpinning to us. And one of the things that happened was when we redress things, we tend to take a science fiction attitude and add a fantasy trapping to it. And so Kaladesh was us sort of leaning a little bit more into our science fiction than normal, if you will. And I think looking back, we were trying to do Magic's take on steampunk. That was our driving force. And the Indian influence was kind of flavoring, but it wasn't, looking back on it, I'm like, oh, we should have made an Indian set. We clearly, I mean, it's one of those things that you sort of get someplace by different things. And it wasn't I look back now and say, oh, we have this great opportunity. We can introduce all these cool things. And I think our focal point was a very, it wasn't that we were trying to, we were just, we were very in and showing our take on steampunk. Sure, of course. And we kind of got to the trapping of the Indian stuff latent in the process, and it wasn't as baked in as we could have been baked in. You know what I'm saying? And like one of the things I hope, if we ever go back to Kaladesh, I see there's an opportunity there for us to kind of revisit this in a way that we didn't before.
If you ever go back to Kaladesh, I would hope you give me a call. Oh, lordy.
But I mean, that's so. What I'm trying to say to you is there is opportunity for us to show people new things.
Sure.
There is opportunity for us to introduce things they haven't seen before. And one of the things that we want to do with Magic is expose more people to more things. We do want to have people see lots of different things. The tricky part about it is we can't treat brand or world that people aren't as familiar with the same way we treat really familiar world based on things that the audience is more familiar with. And the other thing that goes on, by the way, to explain Western Eastern thing is because Western society, whatever, has had a very strong, the entertainment industry has been one of the biggest exports of Western, especially of the US.
Absolutely.
Somebody in Japan has a better understanding of the Cinderella story than I would have at all of to pick a very typical Japanese story that comes from there that, you know, we've done a little bit better job of sort of sharing some of our stuff. And so I agree with you. I think Magic has a wonderful opportunity to explore things and show things and demonstrate things and let people see things they haven't seen before. The one thing I'm trying to say to you is it has to be treated a little bit differently from how we treat known resident things, because when you're introducing something that people or a lot of people don't know, you have to do more hand holding so that they understand it. And what it means is you have to have some structure that makes sense and layer that on top of a known structure. You can't use it definitionally to be the structure.
So Mark, I do want to ask you though, because you've done a lot of like the innovative designs have been some of my favorite things lately, like mystery boosters, the battle bond sets, conspiracy, dual decks you guys put an end to, which broke my heart because that was my favorite way to play Magic. Jumpstart you just came out with, which has now replaced dual decks as my favorite way to play Magic. Do you think that there are any other products you guys have come up with in this casual space that are, if not, nothing is going to be as strong as Commander, but have the kind of potential to show up more than once?
I mean, Jumpstart is a great example. I mean, I think we put Jumpstart out there hoping people would like it because it's the kind of thing we could do more with if people like it. And preliminary, they seem to, so that's a good sign.
I spent all of my money that I've been playing Arena since it literally came out, and I spent every gem and gold I had in the 2 years that I'd built up on Jumpstart in the 3 or 4 weeks that it was out, more than I have on any other thing you guys have done. And I would still be doing that if it still exists. Every time I open up Arena and I don't see Jumpstart, I'm disappointed. Like, I've been playing it with my wife. I got a box of paper, and every week we sit down and we crack open the packs and we play them. Then we put them back in the Cubamajigs reusable booster packs so that we can shuffle them up and play them again. I think you have like the most home run product there, and I would love to see more of it. And I'm sad it came out in the middle of the one time that COVID is killing your printability so that we can't actually get it.
I mean, be aware it is not a limited run product, meaning it's print to order, meaning if there's demand for it, we'll print more. So the good news is, yes, COVID restricted how much we could print, but there's more coming. And so like for people that weren't able to get their hands on it, it is, we want everybody to play it who wants to play it. It's not something that we're trying to limit or anything. I mean, we had some limitations based on factors outside our control, but that was not on purpose or anything. That was,
it must have been a real bummer for you guys that COVID hit right in the middle of Year of Commander, the year where it's going to be the big social blowout and you're putting out all these products and everything, and whoops, society is over.
Well, one of the things that's been very interesting about COVID, just watching, is how strong the casual, especially the Commander community is like, we'll figure it out. We'll find ways with Commander and we'll set up cameras and, you know, it's been one of the things that's been interesting in general about just trying to find the silver lining on what has been a very dark cloud is watching our community like, this is important to us. Magic's important to us. We're going to figure out how to play Magic, and they've been figuring out how to play Magic. It's, you know what,
man? I've played more Commander in paper since COVID started than I had in like the year previous, just because We have webcam games. I play every night. I've got a box league. Me and Sheldon Menery and Brian David Marshall and a bunch of other people. We cracked open a box each of any random booster we had sitting around. Built a commander deck out of that booster box, the 36 packs, and then every week we had 6 packs from a brand new booster set that we just because we've got all this product sitting around doing nothing. So I've got my like Theros set like with Uro as my commander. I added legions. I've added C12. I mean like Magic 12th. Core set 12 or whatever, and it just we are like discovering ways to force paper Magic and EDH in a system that is not set up to let us do that, and I think that's just amazing.
So here's for all the casual audience out there, some good news. I don't think Wizards and R&D in general have been more casual focused than we've ever been in the history of the game. I think the success of Commander has really said, oh, this is giant audience out there. I mean, we've always done casual things. Like I said, Unglued was made back in 1998. So like, it's not like we didn't recognize that audience was there. And like, I mean, as Silver Border's my baby, like I've always been one of the main idea of Magic is fun. You can have fun playing it. You know, yes, it's competitive, and you want to go do that, you can. But it's also fun to just have fun, and enjoy, and like I said, in my mind's always been kind of like the poster child of don't take this too seriously. You can have fun with it.
My wife keeps wanting us to pull out the set where she's like, I want to run around and high five people again, and I'm like, well, you know, not COVID notwithstanding, like she doesn't play. She knows Magic. She knows enough to just like she loved playing on duels or whatever, but she loved playing on Unstable because of the fact that there was all like the party mechanics of like running around high-fiving people, of talking about squirrels, about building contraptions need to come in black border. I'm just saying that right now, putting it on the table. Contraptions need to be in black border. They're so much fun.
So here's an interesting story. I'll tell a little story about Unstable that it's a casual related story.
Yes.
So one of the ideas that I was really up on is what we now call outside assistance. The Unsets want to have high variability. It's variability is fun, but it messes with tournaments. But when you're not caring about being serious, high variance is fun.
Yeah.
So I was looking for other ways to high variance. There's dice rolling and different stuff, and it dawned on me that it's highly variable. People. And so I pitched this idea of we ask outside people for things. And at first, there are a bunch of people that really, like our editor at the time, we changed editors, but our editor at the time hated it. Every time I put in the file, she goes, I think this is a horrible idea. You should take this out. And I said, no. I said, and then we started playtesting it, and we had such fun with it that it was just like, here's a good story. Is Tim Aiden, who was one of a different editor, not the editor I was talking about earlier, but one of our editors for a while at Wizards, and somebody was using Friend Flavor, where you go get somebody. You take over your opponent's turn, but instead of them playing the turn, you get an outside person to do it. And so I forget who it was, Ben or somebody, went and got Tim Aiden, and Tim looked at the board and then just beat him. And he goes, don't pick me again.
I mean, the thing is, like, the Unset was, for me, the resounding memory of that was from the pre-release where you were there in Vancouver, and you sat down and played the two-headed giant game against you ended up getting pulled in for the two-headed giant.
The Scheherazade.
Yeah, the Scheherazade. I was like, oh my god, this is so perfect. This is everything. So, but I do want to bring it back, though. One thing is, because you said you've been more focused this year on casual than ever before, and that's showing up, and that's true. But one of the things I've been hearing, because I'm a member of the Commander Advisory Group, and I hear it from a lot of fans, is that there's a lot of people who are worried that the focus of Wizards, specifically on Commander, making cards specifically for Commander, is hurting Commander by, and I mean in the sense of like, we get cards like Corvald or Tulane, which are so almost just all in one, like engines that draw cards, do the thing, and just like velocity you through the game, and are like breaking the game balance because people who've been playing with like bad legends that were not made for Commander can't keep up with all of these new legends that are just so tightly focused on card draw and on doing things that are incredibly explosive. And it feels like a large part of our decks are becoming more and more prescribed by cards that WotC is making specifically for Commander. Because like when you've got Arcane Signet, which is a 2-mana mono rock that gives you any color of your commander, that is automatically like, why would I ever play a Boros Signet when I've just got this thing that just does the thing better?
Yeah.
And it feels a little bit like we're worried that WotC's focus is going to negatively impact the kind of discovery of being able to find commander stuff just like in the bins from like old sets that we'd forgotten that we can find and make cool again. Because why would you ever do that when there's a specific card that was just printed specifically for commander that just does the thing better? Like, how do you deal with that?
So one of the challenges of, like, when Commander was first made, it was a little tiny behind the scenes sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like one of the, so if we make cards for your format, and many formats we do, the nature of us making cards for that will cause change to happen, right? Yes. That's the nature of us making cards. And I think what happens is when you're a small format, some of the joy of being a small format is that you kind of have to make do with what you can find. So there's a story I tell where when I was in college, my dorm sponsored a float. And so one year I did that, and we had like next to no money, and like we were like trying to get supplies that other people were throwing away, and like we were, and there's only like 10 of us, like it was like a skeleton crew, and we had no money, and I had the best time in the world. It was really, really fun because we were like, we had to make do and be scrappy and figure out how to make it work. And then when we did that, oh, the payoff was so amazing. And then the next year, we teamed up with another dorm or something, and they put all this money into it. And oh, it just wasn't as fun because of like, well, you can have whatever you want, right? Like, you know, there's something real fun about being the scrappy, having to make do. And I think when you're a small format, that is kind of how the format functions, which is we don't pay any attention to you. We just make the cards we're going to make, and then you try to do what you want to do. One of the factors of kind of being big enough is you get attention, and so we start designing in that direction. Now, one thing I will say is we have been getting the note of the thing you're saying, which is, look, let's be careful not to make everything all in one. You know what I'm saying? Let's if we make things too efficient, then it just obsoletes things, and I mean like that message has come across, and so it is something we've heard. So that feedback has been communicated. I don't know. I'm like, when we make products for Commander, when Commander matters, when we focus on that, it is going to have an impact.
Well, yeah. If you're making a card to fill a hole, then that hole is going to get filled, and that means that all the weird things we had to use to patch that hole before no longer apply because the one thing you needed now exists, right? Like that's just going to happen.
We get, for example, I have people ask me for stuff all the time.
Sure.
And a long list of stuff I have is, I want a commander that are these colors and does this. Like for the longest time, there's no blue-red commander that cared about artifacts, right?
Yeah, really. Come on, man.
And obviously we heard that. Now there's a whole bunch of blue-red things that care about artifacts. And I think the problem, sometimes we get into a little bit, is when I know there's a lot of people asking for it, and we know we get to the spot where we can finally do it, we kind of don't want to miss.
Yeah.
Like, for example, okay, it's time for a werewolf commander. People really want a werewolf commander, and we were cautious with it. We weren't aggressive, and then people are like, that was it? That was the werewolf commander you made us? And then they yell at us, and now we have to wait, years and years until we have another shot to do that. And like a werewolf commander double face, like we don't have options to do that, right? So I think there's some pressure on the flip side of, oh, people want this, we don't want to miss on it. And so it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is like the balance of it is your job. That's something that I can do backseat and just sit here and say, like, you guys totally should have done these 30 things and made this card into like, just like slightly. I mean, I think all of these cards could be benefited just by not having the words draw a card on them. Like that would just make it significantly better if they didn't get to draw cards all the time.
I think draw a card is the payoff will matter. And so I agree with you. I think in general we rely on draw a card a little too much. I'm
Well,
in
like
that camp.
Tulane is just the most egregious card ever, though. It's like literally play Magic and win, right? Like you play a land, you draw a card, you get play a creature, you can put an extra land out from your hand into play. It just and it gains you life on top of that. So you're gaining cards, gaining life, playing extra land, and I'm like, come on, dog, just like it doesn't need to do the entire deck by itself.
Well, I mean, one thing I'll stress is we're getting way out of my area of expertise.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand. I'm
I'm
pulling back.
blank paper to something guy, not balance guy. So it's a note that I hear that I pass along to play design and to the commander people. And you know, I do. It's not as if what you were saying is not something I'm hearing.
As long as you guys are hearing it, it just because especially now in the year of Commander, with the fact that Commander Legends coming out in 71, new commanders are coming out, and it's just going to be like, whoa, this format in come November is going to be 100% different than it was now, right? Like it's going to be unrecognizably different. And I think we're all very cautious about what's going to look like. Some of us are optimistic. Some of us are like, the glowing eye of Sauron has come on Commander and we're all going to die. And I'm like, it's going to be fine, guys. It's just Commander. We'll survive.
I mean, Magic is change. The thing that I always sort of stress is, I mean, we started the show talking about this. Like, Magic is different now than it was 25 years ago. It's in constant flux. It is constantly changing. I think Commander is a robust format, and I think there's a lot of things that help it. Like one of the things I find very interesting is this dynamic of I'm in this casual format, but I have to optimize everything.
God, I hate that so much.
Because one of the things for me that's really interesting is like one of the things I purposely do when I make silver bordered sets is I turn variants really high on purpose.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like I make it so that maybe you can be really lucky sometimes, oh man, things went horrible for you. And that one of the things that I really want is I want to have those high variance moments happen. And it's funny, I think that I will share a secret with your audience. Variance is fun. The more you decrease variance, the less fun you're going to make things. Variance 100%. Is fun. And if you're being a competitive player, if the goal is to win, yes, you want to reduce variance because like if it's a skill-based thing where you're trying to win all the time, okay, I want to reduce variance because I want to optimize winning, right? But if you're trying to have fun, variance is fun. Decreasing variance will make things less fun. And so if you're playing Commander and your goal is to have fun, not to win as much as you can. Your goal is to win as much. You can play Commander, win as much as you can. You can do that. There's very competitive Commander. But if your goal is not to win as much as you can, but to have fun, optimize high variance cards. Yes. Optimize doing things that create variance. Variance is what makes it's why it's a Highlander format.
Yes,
it's why there's 100 cards and not 60 cards. Variance is fun. So when you reduce your variance in the way you pick your cards, what you are doing is making your game less fun if your goal of the game is to be more fun. Now, I'm sure people out there are like, I like winning. Winning for me is fun. So when I talk about having fun, I mean, if your goal is not to win as much as possible, if that's not how fun is for you, if you're trying to be competitive and you want to win as much as possible, great, lower variance. Lower variance makes you win more. If your goal is to have social enjoyment and enjoy the experience, variance is the lifeblood of having fun. So as you're building your deck, think about that. That I think one of my fears is that there's people who recognize they can lower their variance, and so they do because in normal competitive matches that's what you're supposed to do, and what they're doing is they're making the experience less fun for themselves. So, for example, one of the things I've been pushing is I would love to have an uncommander format. What I want is just a format that's just Commander plus uncards with maybe a ban list, but like just play the uncards. A lot of them are super high variance.
Yes, I've been pushing for this for years. Yes, I agree.
Contraptions are lots of fun.
I think like 80% of the silver border cards are totally fine. Some of them are just absolutely not, but most of them are totally fine.
Gotcha's not the most fun, so maybe not play as many gotcha cards. But in general, silver border is a lot of fun. And one of the things that my fear for Commander in general, this is my fear for Commander, is I think inertia pushes formats toward the competition side of things.
Yeah.
That as you can optimize, there are people who they've been taught that the way to to build your deck is to optimize. And I worry that as Commander gets played more and gets more focus on it and has more options, that more people will make the best version of it they can, and in the end, have a less fun experience.
Yes, yes. That has been like, since I've joined the CAG and I've discovered about competitive Commander, that's been one of the things I've learned the most, is that there's such a focus for people to want to find a way to play the toppest, like 1% of cards in the entire format, to make like people come to me like, man, my demonic consultation Thassa's Oracle deck just keeps winning. And I'm like, well, then don't play it. Yeah, but I want to win. I'm like, then play a format that cares about winning and not the fun format where we're here for a couple of, like, decking yourself to win is like, okay, great, you consulted for nothing and now you won the game, shuffle up and play again. I don't understand what did you get out of that?
So one of the things we started doing more of is we've been shifting away from tutors and more toward impulses, essentially, where like, instead of go get the card you want, it's like, well, look at the top N cards of your library and take something. And that way, because go get what you want says just play one of it and that's all you need. Look at the top whatever says make that the theme of your deck, so when you look you'll find something. Like I said, like I mean, I'm not in charge of Commander by any stretch of the imagination, but I do believe that the more tutors you stick in your deck, the more you guarantee that you get what you want, the more that every game's going to play out the same. Like one of my favorite formats, one of my all-time favorite formats is a limited format that Henry Stern and I made before I even came to Wizards, back in '94, I think.
Oh boy.
Which we call Mini Master. So what you do is you take a sealed booster pack, you open it up, don't look at it, mix in 3 of every basic land, and play. You and your do that. And the reason it's so fun is you have no idea what's in your deck. Anything could happen, and you play cards you would never ever play. And when you find ways to like win with cards that you've never even put in a deck before, that is so fun and so satisfying.
Exactly. That's why I really like single booster EDH Boxing League. Like, I'm forced to play with draft cards that I would never put in a sealed pool, but I'm like, look, they're in my colors. This is what I got. Let's figure out what happened. And you run into amazing combos you've never seen before. And it's just, that's just the joy of discovery of Magic, is something that is the greatest part of the game. And I think that we hurt ourselves by doing things that just make our decks do one thing really, really well.
Well, I mean, like I said, what I want to stress here is,
I get it. There are people who enjoy that. Please enjoy that.
If your goal is consistency, if your goal is I want to win as much as I can, you should lower variance. That is the correct way to do that. And so I'm not trying to say that reducing variance is bad. Look, if you want to win more, reduce variance. Reducing variance will make you win more. My point of today is, hey, this is a casual podcast. If the reason you're playing is because I just want to experience things, stop doing that. Like one of the things I would say to people is, go get some cards you've never played before and that are in your colors and put them in your deck. Just take cards that look fun that you've never played before and put them in your deck. That is how, you know what I'm saying, like I am a casual player at heart. I mean, it's not that I don't know how to be competitive. I've worked in R&D forever. I played against Pro Tour players. You know, I know how to be competitive. But there's this moment I joke about when I draft, which so I'm a Johnny, you know, at heart, that I call my Johnny Spike moment, right? Where I'm in a draft and I see something, I go, oh, that would be fun. And then the other goes, but this card's going to make you win more. You know, like this card is probably a trap. You're not going to win as much, and you'll be lucky if you make it happen. And this other card is like, well, this card's just going to let you win more. And I will take the Johnny card. I will always take the Johnny card. You know, I mean, every once in a while, I don't do a lot of balanced play testing. When I do balanced play testing, sometimes I'll do the spike thing. But most of the time when I'm playing in Vision Design. I just want to experience the weirder thing. Let's try it out. Is this fun? Because if it's fun, maybe I'll do more of it. Maybe there should be more than one card that does this thing.
I would love to see more build around uncommons, by the way.
What?
I would love to see more build around uncommons, like Goblin Slide or whatever, that let you build wacky decks in draft or sealed. Because that's just my favorite way to play. Like, look, this card is so bizarre. It's using the cards of this set in a completely weird way, and like not the standard rails that you would expect the draft to go in. And it's super fun, like spider spawning, for instance.
Right. So here's the behind the scenes. Here's the problem we run into is when you're making a set, you have themes and things you're trying to support. So you have a lot of things you have to answer to. And so you only end up with so many sort of, I'll call wild card slots, which is this could be anything. And so the build around the uncommons, they're always in there early, and then they get needled out little by little by, we have this theme for this draft, like they, you know. And so I love draft around the uncommons. Drafting to me, the reason that I love drafting is the same reason I think I'm a casual jet player is I want every game to be different. Yes, and when I draft, I haven't played this deck before. And I agree with you. I'm all, and one of the things that I'm constantly fighting for, not just draft on uncommons, but also what we call Johnny Rares, where it was just, who knows what to do with this rare, but it's weird and different. And I love cards like that.
Like that card from Future Sight that's an 8/0, like a power 8 and a 0 toughness.
Right?
You're like, what the heck do you do with this? Who knows?
I love making cards that when you look at it, you're like, what am I supposed to? And not that there's not an answer. You just have, what am I supposed to do with this? Or I love stuff where you do something like, well, why would I do this? And you just figure out the ways to make it happen, you know. And I mean, hopefully, my takeaway today is Magic is the game that you can make it what you want it to be. But if you are a casual player, by casual, I'm defining it as somebody who's in it for, I want to maximize, I'm talking more non-competitive casual right now. Yeah. I want to maximize just having the most awesome experience I can. Winning is something I'd like to do, but it's not as important to me as having an awesome, great time. Reevaluate decisions you're making. You can build your decks to have more fun if that is your goal, and you optimize that over consistency of winning. And that if you do that, what you will find is you might lose more, but the games are going to be more fun for you. And you, the audience, have control. Whether the game, I mean, by the way, another part of this is also who you play with. Meaning if I play with people and everybody I play with is cutthroat competitive, I'm kind of forced to be cutthroat competitive because otherwise nothing will ever happen. So it's not just a matter of how you build your deck. It's choosing what format to play, choosing who you play with. But Magic has all the tools for you to have a really, really fun time, you know. And I'll plug Silver Border once again. Silver Border is really good for doing lots of fun, nutty, crazy things. In fact, one of the things I love doing is making cards that don't quite work, but they work. You know, like
yes.
Probably one of my all-time favorite Silver cards is a card called Yet Another Aether Vortex. Where you play the top card of the library revealed, and if it's a permanent, it's also on the battlefield. I've made more rulings on that card. I love that card.
I like X a lot, the one that you play from somebody else's hand.
It makes sense. The rules can't actually handle it, but the unrules can handle it because it generally makes sense.
Yeah, like the card I like is X, the ninja that you can play from somebody else's hand.
Oh yes.
That card is awesome. And I think the card you were thinking of was Bioplasm from like Guild Pact or whatever, that when it attacks, remove the top card of your library from the game, and if it's a creature, it gets +X+Y until end of turn.
That's an awesome card. It's not the one I was thinking of. The one I was thinking of is where you copied it, but only for the turn. So like why? Anyway, it wasn't about attacking. It was about figuring out how to optimize a temporary body. But anyway. I know what it was. Is you could sacrifice creatures to make a. I'm forgetting one. Anyway, sorry.
It's fine.
It's one of those cards that it made you ask like people kept saying, "Oh, why couldn't you give the creature haste?" And I'm like, "That's not the point. That's not the point. If I gave it haste, you would use it wrong. That wasn't the point." So
it's like make you work for it. I like cards that make you work for it. I think that's more fun. So I want to end with one last question that I think is pretty important. What can you do at Wizards? What is Wizards trying to do to help increase the diversity of the people who make the game so that it can match more of the people who play the game?
I will tell you. We have instituted a brand new policy. I mean, it's something we started and we've ramped it up. But one of the keys we've learned is one of the keys to success. When you look at people and doing diversity hiring, what they found is it's about recruiting. Recruiting, there's other factors to it. But one of the biggest things is that when you kind of look where you always look, you're going to find the same people.
Yeah.
And one of our problems is that, like, for example, I've done the Great Designer search where it's a blind search where I don't even literally, until all the tests are graded, even know who the people are. I know nothing about them. And when the dust settles, we have a lot of the same people that, you know what I'm saying, like, anybody could apply, and it's graded completely. We don't know who they are yet. When we look at the finals we tend to get, they're very similar. You know what I'm saying? And that's a good example where, like, anybody can apply and it's blind, but that's not enough. That's not enough. So what you find is you got to look at recruiting, and you got to look at how you need to go to where the people are. It's not enough for the people to come to you. It's about go where the people are. So we've changed our policies and how we're doing hiring so that we do, we're just trying to get out to find more people, because there are a lot of awesome candidates that you might not see when you're just waiting for people that walk to your door.
Yes.
So we're doing a lot more with that. That's the biggest thing. And we as a company, and we've outlaid a bunch of stuff. Some of this is public, some is not, but we've outlaid a bunch of goals about. We have a goal for diversity. Hasbro has a goal for diversity. Wizards has a goal for diversity. We have targets we're trying to hit, you know. And so one of the things we're trying very hard to do is part of trying to get somewhere is first acknowledging that is where you're trying to get, and saying we do value diversity. You know, we spent a lot of time putting diversity within the game, and now we're trying to spend more time getting more diversity behind the scenes. And I will say, by the way, it's not as if you go back the last 10, 15 years, we haven't made some strides, not enough. You know, we need to do more. I'm not saying that we have done what we should, but I'm saying if I go back to when I started at Wizards, and, you know, October 10th is my 25th anniversary. So 25 years later, it's a very different company than it was 25 years ago. Do we have more to go? Absolutely. Absolutely, we have more to go. And we are taking concrete steps. This is not just saying, well, it matters. We're actively, like, you know, there's a whole list that they send out internally. Like, here's the steps, all the steps we're taking. This matters to us. We're doing this. 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 And there's a lot of stuff. The big part of it is going out and searching and doing trying to find more candidates that have a more breadth of diversity experience. And that's something we do value, because one of the things that we know, and this is just hard science of, you could go look at that. The more people making your product, the more diverse the more different the product is that you make. You know what I'm saying? The more different experiences you have. Like, one of the things that I've always said is, people write to me and say, I want to be in R&D. How can I be in R&D? What do I need? And I'm like, well, here's what you want to do. A, no magic, well, that helps. But B, come to us with a set of skills that we don't have. Come to us with experiences and a point of view that we don't have. That I want somebody, like, I don't need another me. I'll make the cards I'll make. I want someone to make cards I would never, ever make. I want someone who will make a set that I would never, ever make. And I think diversity will help that. Finding people from a wide variety of backgrounds will help that. And, you know, one of the things that I think is we're taking a very hard look of, you know, I think Wizards has made really good strides. And once again, not that there's more strides to make, but in trying to imbue in the product diversity. That if you are playing Magic, I hope more so than any time in the history of Magic, you can see yourself in the game. We're trying to make sure that we do that. And we have been more lax than we should have behind the scenes. It is something that we have stepped up to, made policies, and it's something we are working toward. We want to find a diverse, we want the people who make the game to be as diverse as we want the player base to be.
Yeah. Because honestly, like, as far as, like, there's only things to be gained by having a broader, more diverse R&D, right? Like, because if your audience, if the people making the game are diverse, the people who are playing the game are going to also be more diverse by nature. And you can only make things better by increasing the market of the people who play. And I think that Magic has there's a lot of places we need to go still. This game's got a long way to go. I think a lot of strides have been made. I mean, the existence of Bhatt Ket, for instance, is amazing. And all of the, like, planeswalkers have been so, like, just people more than ever can look at a planeswalker and say, that person feels like somebody that I would know or that I can relate to. And I think that that's an incredible thing. We've got a long way to go, and you know that. And I'm glad to hear that Hasbro is taking more steps. And hopefully when you guys do things like Kaladesh too, you call some consultants who know what they're talking about and we can make a better set. But thank you so much for joining me today, Mark. This has been an incredible talk. And I mean, we didn't even get to like half the things I had on my list of stuff I wanted to ask you about the board games you play. But maybe we can do that another time. And if people wanted to reach you, how would they do that?
I write a column called Making Magic that's posted every Monday. At the end of that column is an email, so you can email me. I also have I'm on Twitter at Maro254. I'm on Tumblr, Blogatog on Tumblr. If you Google that, you'll get there. I have a podcast called Drive to Work. I have lots and lots of ways in which I interact with the public, and the public can interact with me. So the blog and my email and Twitter are probably the three best ways to interact with me. I'm on Twitter every day. I'm on my blog every day. My column goes up every week, and my email's at the end of every single column. There's a link at the end of every column. It is my job to make all of you happy, and I'm better at my job if you all tell me what you want to make you happy. So I love getting interaction with the public. One of the most important things to me in this role has been having as much interaction with the public as I can, and I try to do as much as I can. And so I do want to hear from you. If there's ways we can make Magic more casual, I'm happy to do that. I'd love to hear feedback on whatever format you play, or however you want to play Magic. Tell me what you want out of Magic. Part of my job is to try to make sure that I make all the different people happy. So share your voice. Let me know what you want.
Man, you must get so overwhelmed with all of the questions and tweets and stuff. Like I mean, I get thousands of them a day, and I'm just a CAG guy. You're like the head of Magic. That must be just overwhelming flood.
I have had my blog for like 7 years now, and I don't know, somewhere around like 130,000 questions answered. So
that's so insane.
I answer a lot of questions.
As always, friends, you can find me at Gear Up Where Gears. You can find Casual Magic anywhere podcasts are sold, or at the Greenlit Podcast Network. And as always, it is not magic without the gathering. And we will see you next time. Thank you, Mark.
Oh, thanks for having me.